Hello and welcome to Philosophy Roulette number 207, where I read and review philosophy papers live on air for the viewing public out there. Feel free to join me and come and comment in real time. But here we are on the front of Phil Papers. Let's see what is new. What is new on the hot sheets? The liar paradox in the predictive mind. Well, let's just take a look at what that is, and I always like looking at analysis because they tend to be short. And everyone prefers short as opposed to overly long and drawn out. So let's see what pragmatics and cognition. Do they have anything of reasonable length? Oh, they don't have page numbers. Well, that causes me conniptions. If they don't have page numbers, I don't. Or everything's too long. No, that's not true. It would be 2 to 3 right there. No page numbers. Oh, is everything? Oh, everything's a. As the journal sort of like 2 to 3 is something else. Alright, not reading your stuff then, sorry. Let's see what's forthcoming from analysis. I mean, I expect everything to be reasonably short, but nothing is. Oh, well, let's see. So, well, hey Sirkian, what's up? Let's see what to read tonight. Shifty evidence and shifty books. Let's see if it's available. And the modal, I think I've read the modal argument and proof. So, did I read this? I don't even remember now. What is up? I have a super secret Minesweeper Skunkworks project, and progress is being made. So, it's kind of exciting, but I'm not telling you what it is, but I'm telling you I have a super secret Minesweeper Skunkworks project. So, you're going to have to wait. Alright, so, this is here. Shifty evidence and shifty books. Let's find out. What is shifty evidence and shifty books? I mean, I could throw a book at somebody. There we go. I understand nothing of what I don't understand much of what I'm saying either, so don't you worry. It's all of us together in that. Alright, so here is the link. If you really want to, you can follow along. And anyone else out there, if you're watching this later, you are welcome to joining chat and type !paper in the chat box, and the link will pop back up. Of course, if you're on the YouTubes watching this afterwards, it'll be below in the show notes is the link. So, let's see. You're doing good at convincing me that well, half the world is just faking that you're good at this stuff. So what we got? 6 pages. Oh, I like 6 pages long. Yeah. So what's the old fake it till you make it? I mean, I do know a few things. It's not like I'm a complete noob just trying to like fake my way through it. But yeah, we'll see. Shifty Evidence and Shifty Books by Bob Beddor. And this will be the one time when I can be like, I think I actually know how to pronounce this guy's name, Bob. But everyone else's name, I apologize. If there's anything not very boring English, I will probably screw that up. Okay, a preview. Don't normally get previews. You just get like abstracts, not previews. Alright, so Shifty Evidence and Shifty Books, and feel free to ask questions along the way. I will do my best to answer whatever is going on. Let's see. According to Shifty Epistemology, the truth values of knowledge ascriptions vary with practical. Yeah, that's exactly. This is like content right here. Preview. Truth values of knowledge ascriptions vary with practical factors. Well, what's a practical factor? For example, subject-sensitive invariantists hold that whether you know P depends on the practical consequences of relying on P. Contextualists advance similar theses couched as claims about extinction of the word knows rather than knowledge itself. Okay, so basically, if you can like rely on it, then you can say you know it. This paper investigates an underexplored challenge for shifty epistemology. The challenge is this: the main motivations for getting shifty about knowledge carry over to other epistemic notions, such as evidence and rational credence. But it has been argued that a shifty treatment of evidence and rational credence has disastrous implications for decision theory. Yeah, but maybe decision theory should be a disaster. I mean, I've read other papers recently that would just be like, why would anyone believe decision theory? It's way too abstract from the real world, so it has too many weird things. So maybe that's a good thing that it's disastrous for them. I don't know. In particular, a clever bookie. Oh, okay, so we're doing Dutch book on this stuff. A clever bookie can construct a series of bets with increasing stakes, thereby manipulating the bettor's evidence in a way that ensures they come out poorer. Since Dutch bookability is widely thought to be a sign of irrationality, this seems to be a reductio of any epistemologist that posits pervasive shiftiness. And my apologies to any Dutch people out there, because this should be technically the history of saying Dutch book is because the Dutch were supposedly stupid at the at finance, and they could be tricked, and that's why it was called a Dutch book, because you could trick the Dutch into like losing all their money. But yeah. This is interesting. This highlight looks different than it used to. I wonder what happened. My computer may have updated. While a number of philosophers have developed versions of this challenge, shifty epistemologists have said very little by way of response. This paper rises to their defense. Oh, so we're defending the shiftiness. Appealing to cases of memory loss, I argue that diachronic Dutch bookability does not always entail irrationality. It only does so when the agent's evidence remains the same across a sequence of bets. Okay, so if we're changing evidence, then I guess things are different. This gives shifty epistemologists a compelling response to the Dutch book challenge. By their light, changes in stakes induce changes in evidence. So while evidential shiftiness leads to a form of Dutch bookability, it's a perfectly rational form. Okay, so if we're doing changes in information state over time when it comes to evidence, then I guess you can maintain the reliance, because I guess the reliance at that point would be changing along with the betting. Yeah. Okay. We'll see. From shifty knowledge to shifty evidence. You know what I like? I like nifty arguments, not shifty arguments, nifty arguments. So it's very concerning to me. Here is a common way of arguing for a shifty view of knowledge. Shifty view of knowledge. I want a nifty view, not a shifty view. Come on. Start with the idea that knowledge is abundant. We know lots of things about the external world. I already disagree with you. I think we know jack crap about most things. Combine this with the assumption that knowledge provides a secure basis for action. Someone who knows P can rationally act as if P is true. Well, that's okay. Finally, observe that whether it is rational to act on the basis of some proposition depends on the stakes of the decision. From these premises, subject-sensitive invariantists draw the conclusion that knowledge depends on stakes. In ordinary circumstances, knowledge is abundant. But that's okay, I guess. If you're just depending knowledge on what you can rely on, there's plenty of things you can rely on, and therefore you have lots of knowledge. I mean, okay, but I mean, world shifts beneath you, and so that causes problems. And then most people say, well, if you didn't really know if it can change on you. But alright, we'll see. But once stakes grows up, it becomes scarce. Okay, yeah, so once things get dangerous, you don't rely as easily on the evidence. Contextualists such as DeRose often argue along similar lines, though for them what shifts is the extension of the word knows. Okay. So instead of like what knows picks out in the world, that's what extension is, as opposed to the stakes changing over what is what you can rely upon. Yeah, it's two sides of the same coin, really. When this argument is formulated in terms of knowledge, it can be extended to other epistemic notions, such as evidence and rational credence. To see how it would work in case of evidence, start with the idea that evidence, like knowledge, is abundant. Lots of propositions about the external world can form part of your evidence. To make things concrete, suppose you've just arrived at the office, you see your colleague Constance walk in the door ahead of you. Plausibly, you thereby acquire the proposition Constance is in the office. Office for short as part of your evidence. You know, what's interesting here is I don't know if this abundance claim that keeps coming up, I'm not sure I really understand what's going on with that. So we've got this abundance thing here, this claim of abundancy of knowledge. Lots of propositions about the external world can form part of your evidence. I'd say they could potentially form part of my evidence, but I don't know if they do. I mean, what's the work doing with this can here? Maybe that's all that it is. Like they can form part of your evidence, but like does that mean that evidence is abundant or it is potentially abundant? Um, See right here that like it is abundant versus can be there. So I'm not sure that it is abundant, but it may potentially be abundant. Okay. Next, combine this with the idea that evidence that Candace is in the office. Next, combine this with the idea that evidence, like knowledge, provides a secure basis for action. This idea is implicit in decision theory. Decision theory says to maximize expected utility, and on at least one natural interpretation, expected utilities are calculated using evidential probabilities. Okay, from this it follows that if P is part of your evidence, then it is rational to take P for granted in practical reasoning, that is, to perform whatever actions maximize the expected utility conditional on P. Yeah, so if you buy P, then you should basically act as if P is true. Yeah, so as part of evidence, then it's rational to take P for granted. So you think P is right, so that's how you act, as if P was right. Finally, observe that whether it is rational to take P for granted depends on the stakes. For example, suppose that having just seen Constance enter the office, a bookie materializes in front of you and offers you a bet on whether office is true, that is, Constance is in the office. If the bet is low stakes, it seems rational to accept. But if the bookie asks you to bet your life on this proposition, the rational course is to decline. Well, here's the question. Exactly what are they giving you to bet your life? What's the alternative if you're right? Is it still worth it, given the stakes that they offer, to bet your life on the proposition that Constance is in the office? I mean, if you are going to be unbelievably wealthy, everyone you know is going to be set for life, cancer is cured, and and nature is like, we're no longer, and like global warming disappears. Maybe that is a good bet to take, that Candace is in the office, and for the risk that your life is going to end on the chance that she is not in the office, maybe those are high enough stakes, and you say, you know what, I'm willing to bet my life and to save the entire world. So this is a question on exactly which stakes are we talking about, like what are the stakes and what are the relevant stakes, because it seems like this betting is low stakes. Yes, but that doesn't mean that when they're high stakes, they could be high enough that it actually turns around to make it worth your while. Okay, continuing. A shifty view of evidence offers to reconcile these observations. According to subject-sensitive invariatism about evidence, which propositions are part of your evidence is itself a function of the stakes. When the bookie presents a low-stakes bet on office, your evidence still includes office, hence it would be rational to accept. But once the stakes are raised, you lose this proposition as evidence, hence you shouldn't bet your life on it. Here too, this view can be given a contextualist twist. On this contextualist variant, shifts in stakes induce shifts in which propositions the phrase my evidence picks out in your context. So advocates of shifty knowledge face pressure to go in for evidential shiftiness. No surprise then that many shifty epistemologists have gone this route, but it's a route that leads directly to Dutch Book Challenge. The Dutch Book Challenge. Yeah. Okay, so far, what have we got? We've got some, the setup here is basically saying, hey, look, if once things get real, things get hard, people stop acting the same way. And since people stop acting the same way when things get like significant, like their life is on the line or it's a lot of money, then you have to shift what counts as rational, and that's what this shiftiness is. So what knowledge you have, what you call knowledge, is shifting when things get like hardcore, and you're like, well, I'm not going to actually accept that, even though all the other times you might accept something to be true. When it gets to be like here's $10 million, are you going to bet someone's life on it? Maybe not all of a sudden. And then so now that's what's shifting. Is that once things once the bets start to like get massive and might be life changing, then all of a sudden you don't know anymore. Okay, and Dutch book is a way to always win a bet. There are a few ways of, yeah, and so feel free to ask questions, anyone out there. Let me know. The Dutch Book Challenge. Here are a few ways of constructing a Dutch book against an agent whose evidence shifts with stakes. Here's one. Stakes manipulation. As before, you have just seen your colleague Constance enter the office. You think that conditional on Constance being in the office, there is a 50% chance she parked on Main Street, but there's no chance she parked on Main Street if she's not in the office. I mean, she couldn't be getting coffee down the block yet. As before, a bookie appears before you. This time they start off by offering you the bet. You win $1 if Constance parked on Main Street, and you lose $1 otherwise. Since office is still part of your evidence, you regard this bet as fair, so you take it. What do you mean by fair here? This is not normally actually what people call as fair. If it was fair, you'd have equal credence to think that she was in the office or not. So it's not a fair bet because you think you have a great evidence to the other one, and the bookie has lacking evidence. So I wouldn't call this a fair bet, especially for the bookie. Okay, continuing. Next, yeah, so I just want to point that out right there. This is a little odd, right, to call this fair. Next, the bookie offers you an evidence-destroying bet. A penny if office is true, your life otherwise. Given the shifty view of evidence, you now lose office as evidence. Consequently, you decline the bet. But now your first bet concerning Constance's parking starts to look unwise. After all, your new evidential state leaves open the possibility that Constance is not in the office. Noticing your remorse, the bookie offers to cancel your earlier bet for a penny surcharge. You gratefully accept. Okay, so that's kind of funny. It's well, your life if you don't take this bet. And they say, well, I'm not going to take the bet. Then they say, well, it sounds more like extortion. Or is this blackmail? No, it's like extortion, I think, is what this sounds like. You're going to die if you don't take this bet. But if you just give me a little bit of money, it's okay. Sounds like it. Okay, our bookie has constructed a series of offers, each of which you regard as fair, but which, if accepted, are guaranteed to make you poorer. See, I don't think any of the, what is the notion of fair here? This is very strange to me, because usually if it's fair, it's you don't know what's going to happen, and they don't know what's going to happen, and that's why you give odds, is to make it fair. So if you... the general concept of fair in these things, as I understand it, is that, look, if we think it's going to rain tomorrow with a 50% chance, that's fair. Now, if we think it's going to rain tomorrow with a 75% chance, and I want to bet you that it's not going to rain, I have to give you 3-to-1 odds that it's not going to rain because, whichever, the other way around. If I'm going to bet you that it's going to rain, and you're going to take that as not going to rain, I have to give you 3-to-1 odds because it's 3-to-1 that it's going to rain. So you have to be incentivized to make that a fair bet, that it's going to be the 25% chance, not the 3 times as high, 75% chance that it's going to rain. So those bets are fair. And these bets, you think you're almost certain that that Constance is in the office. So that's like saying, all right, I've got a 90% chance that she's in the office. So to give $1 on one side and lose $1 on the other is not a fair bet for the bookie. That is an unfair bet because it's you've got a 90% credence that Constance is in the office. So I'm not sure. That's why you give odds, to make these bets fair. And so I'm not thinking this fairness is what is standard, at least not as I understand it. Okay. So, but I mean, of course, I only understand a few things. Okay, continuing. This seems like an uncomfortable result. It's often maintained that Dutch bookability is a hallmark of irrationality. So if the shifty view of evidence, when combined with standard decision theory, says that you are behaving rationally in stakes manipulation, it would seem that this view of evidence must be wrong. Yeah, but I mean, it's sure, if you're willing to take the first bet and you're not willing to take the second bet, then it would be, assuming they were fair, then it would be irrational. And because if you were in this position, then it would be Dutch booked because you would be trying to get out of it, but you'd still have to pay for it. And in the end, you'd lose the penny. So You'd be losing the 1% of your bets every time you started betting with this bookie. So, okay. Okay, resisting the challenge. But closer examination shows that this conclusion is too hasty. Consider an analogous case. Memory manipulation. As before, you've just seen Constance walk into the office. As before, our bookie starts off by offering you a low-stakes bet at even odds that Constance parked on Main Street. You regard the bet as fair, so you take it. See, even odds, and fair. Strange. Immediately thereafter, the booker gives you a sip of water. Bad news, the water was taken from the river Lethe, which induces forgetfulness. This causes you to forget whether you saw Constance enter the office. Post-potation, your earlier bet looks a lot riskier. Noticing your remorse, the bookie offers to cancel your earlier bet, again for a penny. You gratefully accept. I like this author, they at least use some fun words. You got post-potation instead of after drinking. This is post-potation. Get the alliteration and consonants. Once again, you've been Dutch booked, but you acted rationally at every step. Cases like memory manipulation carry an important lesson. Contrary to what is often claimed, it is not necessarily rational to accept a diachronic Dutch book. But this does not mean that there is no connection between diachronic Dutch bookability and irrationality. The following restricted connection remains extremely plausible. Restricted Dutch book principle. It is irrational for S to accept a diachronic Dutch book provided S's evidence remains constant across the bets. Yeah. This allows that in memory manipulation your behavior is rational. When you imbibe the Lethean libation, you lose evidence that you possessed when taking the first bet. But if we say this about memory manipulation, we can say the same about stakes manipulation. When the bookie raises the stakes on the second bet, you lose evidence that you possessed when taking the first bet. In both cases, your exploitability, while unfortunate, does not make you irrational. Okay, so this is interesting because in the first one, you don't you're saying you're losing evidence, but you're not losing that you saw. Like, what exactly are we counting as evidence then? Because if you saw Constance go into the office, and you're saying, well, that's my evidence in the first case. But you're saying, well, I saw Constance go into the office, but that is not my evidence in the second case. It feels like you're not, it's a very odd thing to be saying that you're losing the evidence that, I guess maybe it's just a semantic thing. It's not, you're not counting it as evidence anymore, or because it's like you're losing the evidence. It's not like you're losing it the same way you're losing your memory. It's that like you're somehow being scared out of your wits, not being forgetful. Or being forgetful due to drugs. Okay, but yeah, some odd things going on here. Alright, continuing, reviving the challenge. Some readers might have the lingering sense that there is something especially troubling about the sort of exploitability exemplified by stakes manipulation. But is there any normatively relevant difference between stakes manipulation and memory manipulation? Let's consider some candidates for what the difference might be. All right, this is just what I was mentioning, this sort of stuff. So, first, some might emphasize that the sort of exploitability in stakes manipulation is foreseeable. Perhaps this is what is really worrisome about the Shifty view of evidence. It entails that you can know in advance that if the stakes are raised between bets, you will be led to accept offers that are guaranteed to result in a loss. But a moment's reflection reveals that this reply is inadequate, since the same could be said about memory manipulation. After all, you can know in advance that if you forget relevant information between bets, you will be condemned to accept a similarly impoverished sequence of offers. You wouldn't know it was fair anymore is the issue. So, second, some might maintain that Dutch bookability is often just a symptom of a more basic rational failing. This idea is suggested both by Greco and Rubin. They observe that if evidence shifts with stakes, agents will revise their evidential probabilities and hence their credences by procedures other than conditionalization, rendering them susceptible to Dutch books. Perhaps it's the failure to conditionalize rather than the Dutch bookability per se, which makes these agents irrational. However, this reply is also inadequate for much the same reason. In memory manipulation, you also revise your evidential probabilities by procedure other than conditionalization, namely forgetting. But this does not make you irrational. Finally, our objector might point out that in stakes manipulation, there is some sense in which you retain the information that Constance is in the office, even after receiving the evidence-destroying bet. After all, you certainly appear to remember seeing her walk in. If asked, you will be willing to say things like, well, I'm fairly confident I saw Constance walk in, I just wouldn't bet my life on it. By contrast, in memory manipulation, you do not in any sense retain the relevant information. So it's like if you get bonked on your head, sure, you're going to say different things. So, but this is what I was worried about earlier. All right. However, this difference is inessential. Well, why? Consider a variant of memory manipulation where your Lethean beverage does not completely erase your memory of Constance walking into the office. Rather, it diminishes your confidence in this memory. In this memory fading variant, there's some sense which you retain the information that Connie is in the office even after imbibing. Well, wait a second. Well, it's like, well, you're going to call your memory a dream now, is basically what you're saying. And you're like, well, I kind of have a memory of it. Well, it's like you don't. So it's like you had an experience of it, but you can't actually guarantee that that experience was reality. And you're saying that's much. I don't see how that's not essential. Okay, but let's continue. In this memory fading, there's some sense in which you retain the information that Connie is in the office even after imbibing. But since you are not certain of office, it is still rational for you to cancel your earlier bet. Yeah. Since the probability that she parked her Main Street conditional on your current evidence is less than 0.5. As before, you've been Dutch booked, but your behavior was rationally impeccable. Once again, we failed to find any essential normatively relevant difference between the two cases. No, because you have to be able to place the evidence in the relevant context for these things. So if you can't say that, like, the difference between your memory of her walking the office is what you just saw versus was it a dream, then you can't connect the information in the relevant way. Why is that inessential? Because you still, given the stakes manipulation, you don't think that your memory was faulty at all. You're just scared that something went wrong. And is that any different from being scared that you're misremembering a dream? Maybe, but okay, so they're saying that actually isn't there isn't anything there because being scared witless is like thinking your actual memory is dreamlike. Again, I'm a little concerned about this scared witless. I'm not entirely sure what the operation is here for stakes manipulation, because I don't think these things are fair to begin with, because losing your life is not the right thing. So it's like, I'm not sure the stakes are being manipulated in a fair way, actually. And so the operation that's going on here is different. And that's really what I'm getting at. It's that when you can't remember correctly, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to take a bet on that. But in stakes manipulation, the stakes are being manipulated in a way that's very different from changing your memory, because I think it's happening in some very unfair way, and it makes it hard to rationalize such big stakes on certain sorts of experience. So, granted, I wouldn't have called Constance walking into the office like absolute knowledge to begin with either. But yeah. But okay, at least I see the point here, is that in raising the stakes, it does sort of raise doubts about... It does not raise doubts. Something else is going on, I think. It's that the stakes are changing how you're dealing with fairness, not the memories, in my opinion. But at least these paragraphs here actually make it... This is good, at least. The author has at least made a reasonable claim on why memory manipulation and stakes are kind of similar. Because when changing the stakes, you start to question your memory, and same with, like, if you start to think it's like a dream, your same sort of thing there is going on. You're starting to question what is going on. Okay. The upshot: it proves difficult to pinpoint anything especially concerning about the sort of exploitability that arises from shifty evidence. This should be welcome news for shifty epistemologists. Well, I think I just got one, but we'll see. Oh, and that was it. Okay, so short and sweet paper. It was kind of fun. It was well written. Like, at least it was more funly written than other papers, especially in this area. A lot of these things, when you get to decision theory, tend to be extremely painful to read. Sorry, other people. But yeah, this was kind of well written. You've got like nicely highlighted examples like memory manipulation, stakes manipulation. I still thinking that the concept of fairness used here is questionable. Because if the way things are made fair is by giving stakes that actually accord to the credences. So if you think something is more likely than not, you give someone better odds to, like, you give them odds in their favor so that they're more willing to take the bet. And then, like, if you win if, like, you gave them odds that they thought were better in their favor, but were still slightly in your favor. So if you think it's going to rain with 75% chance tomorrow, and you give them 70% odds, so that means, like, for every dollar that they bet, they're going to get like they're going to get like 70% extra back over their dollar. So it's like for $1, they're going to get $1.70 or whatever it is. But really, they're more likely to lose 75% of the time. So in the long run, you're going to get that 5%. So that's what fairness is. And so I don't actually think this $1, these bets here are what is understood as fair. And then when you change the bet to something very, very different, I think my understanding of this is like I'm losing the thread here, because this is not what I think of as fairness. So this is sort of, now, of course, I'm not an expert in this area. This is not my area to begin with. So I kind of, I do look at probability a bit, and that's why I have an opinion on this matter. But, like, this is what worries me here, because this penny thing, like, then a penny versus your life, is something that is completely not, it's really hard to, like, give a measure on your own life. You can't do that. And a penny obviously doesn't get anywhere near that. So that's just completely going off the rails. So you're going from something that was an unfair bet but rational, like something you could understand, this dollar bet, to something that doesn't even make sense. And then they're accusing the shifty evidence people of, well, you're not making any sense anymore. It's like, no, the fairness didn't make sense. This is what I'm worried about, that the setup here is a little confused to me. And so that tad worried about that understanding of fairness. That said, everything else about this paper, my philosophical disagreements notwithstanding, this is a pretty nice paper, actually. Short, sweet, very well written given the subject matter. And so yeah, I do like to say, like, all right, so in this area, like, I kind of know something about probability, and that's where that's what my gripes are on. So I do know something here, but, like, given that, like, besides my gripes, like, this is actually a very good paper. So I'm trying to give, like, some sort of rating system. Can't think of a good one yet. But yeah, so this one scores high marks on the writing. This is well explained for the topic too. So it's not just that it was well written; it was well explained. Yeah, so good paper. This is actually something, like, I'd say recommendable for this topic, because these are classic topics. Dutch book challenges, applying this to a new area is kind of nice. So this is actually, like, pedagogically, I think this is a nice paper too. So yeah. Okie doke. I guess that's it for now. Anyone out there, if I post this, if anyone's watching, I will be on Bubba Bloop's channel on Friday Eastern Daylight Time doing some Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And so you can go to twitch.tv/Bubba Bloop. But as of after that, everyone else have a good night, and let's go Sirkin. So But other than that, it's getting late here. I hope everyone has a good night. Circan, have a good day because it's probably like daytime for you. But yeah. So I will see you all soon. And stay safe out there, everyone. Let's check actually. Real quick. Clicky, clicky. Yep. Is anyone else online? Can like send the few people here over to? Nope, no one's got. Okay, have a great night then.